What are some common misperceptions about program management that you've kind of encountered in the AEC industry? Because I think sometimes people do use it interchangeably with project management.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is that program management is the same as project management, or it's just a scaled up version of project management. And so a $1 billion program is just a bigger $100 million project, right? And so that's something that...
In the AEC industry, program management is often misunderstood. Some see it just as a glorified version of project management, while others think it's only about overseeing multiple projects. Many believe program managers are merely administrators focused on processes and procedures, or that their role is limited to reporting and tracking metrics. These misconceptions can undermine the true value of effective program management, which is why in this episode, I am thrilled to be joined by Erin Slayton, licensed professional engineer, senior VP, and transportation program management director at HDR. And she's going to explain and debunk these misperceptions, shedding light on the true role and importance of effective program management in project success. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show for today. Today I have with me Erin Slayton. Erin is a licensed professional engineer, Senior VP, and Transportation Program Management Director at HDR. Erin, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Erin, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you ended up in transportation program management?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my entry point into transportation was the fact that I fell in love with bridges at a very early age. I grew up near the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and I learned all about Gallup and Gertie in high school and was just fascinated by it. And I just thought bridges were just so beautiful. And I knew I wanted to be involved with bridges. And so I went to school to be a civil engineer, focusing on structures, and really had it in my mind that I was going to do bridge design. And then at the time I was starting grad school, I got a job with, it was called the Seattle Popular Monorail Authority, and we were going to be building a monorail system through the city of Seattle. And that was an early entry for me into this world of program management, where I really got to see what it was like to be at that big picture level and have an opportunity to not necessarily do the design, but be involved with the designers, with our planners, with our environmental team, with our communications team, with our, everybody. And I fell in love with it. And I really found that I was pretty good at it and decided that that was the path that I wanted my career to take. I was in the middle of grad school and, kind of had this existential crisis about, what do I do now? But my boss told me, finish grad school. It's never going to hurt you to have that structural engineering background. So I did. I finished grad school, got my PE. But, I just was bit by that bug. And so the monorail project, unfortunately, collapsed. But after that, I went to work for HDR, and I've been here now for almost 19 years. And at HDR, I started out working on the floating bridge program, SR 520 floating bridge program in Seattle, which the world's longest floating bridge. So that was a pretty exciting program to be involved with. I spent about 8 years working on that program and then moved to Phoenix to work on the South Mountain Freeway project, which was a greenfield highway to complete the Loop 2 in Phoenix. And then following that, I moved to Columbia, South Carolina to work on the Carolina Crossroads program. And on the previous 2 programs, I had been a deputy program manager. And moving to South Carolina was an opportunity for me to be in the lead role as a program manager. And so I did that for a few years before I got my current job, which is HDR's Transportation Program Management Director, where I now help other teams with their delivery and marketing and talking a lot to clients about the work we do and trying to enhance our practice.
That's interesting. And it's always interesting about how, things that impact us as children and how we carry that into our careers.
That's right.
Like your example starting off with the bridge there. But I think that's great. And what we're going to dive into today with Erin, of course, is kind of program management. I mean, this is a kind of project management podcast, and, there are different terms, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. And I guess the first question that I can ask you, Erin, is what are some common misperceptions about program management that you've kind of encountered in the AEC industry? Because I think sometimes people do use it interchangeably with project management.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, is that program management is the same as project management, or it's just a scaled up version of project management. And so a $1 billion program is just a bigger $100 million project, right? And so that's something that we hear. Well, we know how to do project management. We do that all the time. So surely, we just throw a few more resources at a big one, and we'll be fine. So it's not just scaling up the delivery approach. It's really thinking through it very differently. And I think because in program management, you do often have interrelated projects that are happening at the same time. And ultimately, in program management, I would say that the end point is a little bit different. I think with project management, you're very focused on the infrastructure itself and in delivering the very specific infrastructure. Whereas with program management, we often at the start of a program don't even know what the final product is going to be. So you can't really focus on what the infrastructure is. You have to focus on what is the outcome. Are you creating, corridor mobility? Are you injecting some economic stimulus into the region? Are you really just helping improve people's lives by helping them move from place to place a little bit better and a little bit easier? So I think it's coming to it with that frame of mind, is thinking about how do all of these pieces fit together? How do all of these interdisciplinary pieces fit together? Because that overarching goal that you're trying to achieve it's greater than the sum of its parts. So you really do truly have to look at the big picture in order to be able to help deliver a program. So,
and again, just to go a little deeper on this, when you think of program management, if you were explaining it to someone, when I think of project management, I'm managing a singular project.
Yep.
Is program management is it involve multiple, almost like a portfolio of projects? Like what are you see? Because you mentioned like multiple or different parts.
And it can be different. I think especially within transportation, we often have mega projects within transportation that may be a single multi-billion-dollar program. I mean, the project that I worked on in Phoenix was a single $2 billion project. It was one project let to one contractor that they did break it up into pieces just to help them manage it better, but it was delivered as a single project. But because it was so big and complex and involved alternative delivery and different phasing and different pieces, we treat it like a program. And there are more traditional programs, whereas, as you said, so the program here in South Carolina actually started as a single project. And then over time, we ended up breaking it into multiple pieces. So now it is a program of multiple projects that we are looking at, again, from that big picture perspective, to make sure that we can deliver all of the parts and pieces, and that we're evaluating the risks between each project is just as important as how you deliver each individual project. Yeah,
that's great. And I think one way that I can visualize it is if you think of it as Like if I'm an engineer and I'm doing design work, I'm focused on a portion of a project.
Yes.
If I become a project manager, I'm now responsible for that entire project and the different process groups of that project. If I'm a program manager now, I think I'm getting a little bit of a higher view, right? And
That's
maybe
right.
I need to look at that one project, but then this other project that could impact it. Or as you suggested, it could be a very, very large project that has kind of different components of it that have to be put together. So it just, to me, it seems a really good way to think of it is it's a very high level approach, right? A very big picture approach, because you got to keep your eye on a lot of things as a program manager.
Yeah. And I would say the one thing that unites all programs, whether it's a single mega project or it's multiple projects within a program, is that they're multidisciplinary. And so it's not just our designers, but it's our public involvement team. It's our environmental team. It's understanding the politics of the region and how that impacts things. So it truly is interdisciplinary in the function and understanding how at any given time, any one of those aspects could impact everything else. And so how do you manage that appropriately?
Interesting. So going back to your field a little bit, transportation, how does program management add value to large scale transportation projects? If you can maybe give us a little examples or just speak to that.
Yeah. And so I would say, program management approach, it's scalable to whatever the needs of that program are. And it frequently hinges on you being able to pay attention in the beginning to identifying risks. We're often using program management tools and, you're trying to figure out how are we maximizing the efficiency of the staff. I think one of those other misconceptions with program management is that you're going to come in with a whole huge team of people and, try to take over. But in reality, on two major programs, I've been the only FTE, the only full-time FTE for a period of time, because as I said in the beginning, you often don't know what you're delivering right at that beginning point. So it really truly is trying to develop that efficient team structure, figure out how you're going to manage your risks and how you're going to set forth that program management or that programmatic approach. And that upfront effort really, it pays off in the life of the program. It helps you build efficiencies. It helps you build effectiveness. And it really helps the project team see challenges before they happen.
Yeah, that's great. And I think when you gave that example about, kind of coming in here and taking over, it made me think of something like if there was like a local police department doing an investigation and then all of a sudden like the state police comes in and says, we're taking over. I think initially the local people will be like, why are you taking over?
Yeah.
But then you think about it and they have a lot more resources than us and they have things that they can see that we can't see that might be beneficial. And, I guess one question that would lead to, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking about right now, is at what point in a project should an owner engage a program manager and talk about the timing and why that might be important?
Yeah. And so I think that the best benefits you get are as early as possible. And so sometimes I think I've heard of owners who want to hire the design build contractor first and then bring on a program manager, for example. And so what I try to encourage is, even if you don't have the full-blown program management set up early, at least have that small team of advisors that are there early on who can help with procurement, who can help with strategy, who can even help with selection of delivery method or methods that you are going to use. And that's what I meant about, being able to look at things early, look at the risks, and try to use that to set up a successful process for the future. So I would say as early as you can have someone involved, even if it's a small team at first, and you grow as the needs are better identified. I think that is very helpful for owners.
Yeah, and I would even think like just one example in scoping the project, right? Because if you have such a big program that you're working with, before you dive into it and start eliciting parties and experts, having someone like a program manager that can help you look through the different phases, components, and scoping could mean all the difference in terms of the success of the project right from the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it's a sense of again, taking what are those overarching goals and using that to help you with that scoping process, but being flexible as well, because things are going to change. That is one thing I have experienced in every program that I've worked on, is that there is some curveball that's going to come at you, and you're going to have to change your approach in some ways. So I think, but having the processes that allow that flexibility and allow you the ability to change course if needed in a straightforward manner. So you're not, having to rip up everything and start from scratch, but you really are able to redirect as needed.
So Erin, why do you think more clients these days are seeking out program management services? Is there anything kind of driving this trend, do you think?
I think there are several things. I think we have lots of aging infrastructure. I think that there's a lot with the funding. I mean, the IIJA has just injected so much funding into the industry, and a lot of owners can't spend the money fast enough. Right. And so they don't have the staff. Some of them don't have haven't done these types of programs before. We're seeing a lot more alternative delivery. We're seeing more progressive models of alternative delivery that many of our clients have not used before, but they're interested in engaging in. We're addressing more complex problems like equity, resiliency, with these hurricanes that we're seeing. Sure. We are just seeing these multiple disasters that really take an approach to say, okay, how are we not only going to fix what has just happened with these disasters, but how are we going to make our communities more resilient for what's to come? So I think that's why owners are seeking support for these program management services. Often too, I will say with program management, I would say our primary role is to help owners with informed decision making. Also, what goes along with many of our program management exercises is some sort of staff augmentation. And so we can help owners fill in the gaps where they may need additional support to help in their delivery. So whether that's design teams, whether that's construction management teams, whether that's, the project control support, we can help fill in those gaps and ultimately help the owner be able to deliver on the promises that they've made to their stakeholders.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I mean, some of what I've seen in past years is, I think in the past I've seen where this is seen as this upfront cost that maybe people weren't necessarily willing to invest for whatever reason at the time, budget, maybe the projects weren't as big, weren't as complex. But now, based on a lot of the things you're saying, the infrastructure bill, weather, climate, et cetera, people understand that the value that you're getting in paying for like a program manager up front is really going to save you in the long run. And it's worth making that investment up front for a lot of the things that you already said. I just feel like I'm seeing more people willing to make that initial investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have lots of examples of that. I mentioned the South Mountain Freeway project in Arizona that I worked on. That was an example where by bringing us early and collaborating with the owner, we were able to take what started out as multiple projects and bring it into one. And those multiple projects were planned to be delivered using a more traditional approach, design, bid, build. But by bringing it in, we actually created it as a P3. It was a design, build, maintain. We ended up saving more than $100 million. So, wow. I mean, our efforts pay for themselves and then some, by being able to help with that strategy and be able to think through things a little bit different and help forecast what some of those challenges are and plan for how we're going to mitigate those and be able to deliver.
Yeah, I'd like to think that part of our responsibility as AEC professionals is educating the clients and the private owners on exactly what you just described, right? The value that you can add by bringing program management into your project at the early stages, because I think a lot of people it's just lack of awareness around it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So to that end, what are some career opportunities that exist in program management?
I think there's so many of us who are program managers. We started off our careers like I did as engineers. In some of our other markets, so outside of highways, I would say we see more planners who are program managers. And maritime, maybe we see people who came up from construction. So there's a number of pathways, I would say, for people who are interested in becoming a program manager. But there are also lots of other careers that we are needed and are critical in program management. So I mentioned earlier project controls. We have a lot of people who have become program managers through a pathway of learning and understanding and delivering on the project controls. So that too is a critical aspect in helping with informed decision making throughout the life of the project team. And we still need designers. We're often in program management doing design reviews for alternative delivery. We are creating bridging documents for procurement. And even in some program management offerings, we may also be doing 100% design if there's a design bid build project within the program. So that has been the case also on several programs that I've worked on. So I think there's this misconception that if you do program management, you no longer do design.
Right.
That's not always the case. And so we certainly do need the people with those strong design backgrounds. We need I talked about procurement. We need folks who want to dig into those documents, help develop the technical provisions, are really good and structured and organized, and who can work with those multiple disciplines to convert what the needs of the program are into paper. And that is not an easy thing to do. So there are just so many opportunities for people who have a variety of skill sets to serve on a program. I would say, too, going back to the program manager themselves, since this is a project management podcast, I do want to say what is critical to becoming a program manager is having solid project management skills. So I don't want to suggest that the two are so different that they're not related. Right. You have to have the fundamentals. You have to have solid understanding of schedule management, budget management, earned value management, people management, relationship management. You have to have all of those fundamentals in order to become an excellent program manager.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one thing I'll just say, because I know we have listeners in all different size firms and organizations, and at EMI, we do a lot of work now with larger firms in terms of PM training and project management development programs. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the terms you mentioned, like project controls and program management. But I know for some of you at smaller firms, because I initially worked at a smaller consulting firm, you may not even be aware of those terms, like project controls and program management. So And project controls, from my experience, is that it could be a group in a company or a professional that focuses on helping to monitor the project, monitor the budget, monitor milestones. And in fact, some of the larger clients we work with, every project manager has like a project controls representative that they can reach out to run reports for them and things of that nature. So I know some of you that don't have that are like, wow, I wish I had someone to help me with that.
I could do that myself. Yeah.
But I guess my point is not to discourage you at a smaller company, because there may even be opportunities for you to start that up there, right? Open up a small project controls group or get more interested in project controls yourself. But I think just to Erin's point, there are so many different opportunities available in program management, project controls, and obviously still design, of course. So I think it just speaks to the exciting time that the industry is going through. The IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, has brought a lot of opportunity to organizations throughout the country, right? This money is getting dripped through all the DOTs and different agencies and different projects. So there is a lot of opportunity out there, which is exciting. And I guess kind of just to kind of wrap us up as we get towards the end of this, maybe you could just talk a little bit about, as an engineer yourself, right? You went through your career, still going through it. You're now into program management. Maybe you could just reflect a little bit on how program management has impacted your career overall as an engineer.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think for me myself, I was very fortunate in that I fell into it. It wasn't something I was looking for. One thing I neglected to mention is really my first opportunity in a program management role was when, as an intern, I found out that they were building a second Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and I said, "Well, this is the whole reason I became an engineer. I got to figure out how to get involved in this thing, right?"
That's great.
So I got involved in that. And it was just, I think it's just the fascination. It's just, absorbing lots of different information and being excited about doing lots of different things. And I think a lot of people can be intimidated by this big, huge program. And I certainly understand why that sounds scary, but I would say that it's a shift from feeling like you have to be the one with all the answers to more so being the one who coordinates all the answers. And so, my job as a program manager is really to lean upon my team, who I have tons of expertise within my team. My job is to be able to see how all of those aspects relate to each other and to work with those folks to analytically solve a problem. And so what I think how being involved on programs has helped me is that I've been able to see so many aspects of what it takes to deliver our largest and most complex job. So, obviously starting with the design piece, but being involved in what it takes to run an environmental impact statement and what it means to run public meetings and how you take that input in, and what it means to be involved, as I mentioned, on the political side, and figuring out what all of those different aspects are, getting to have a chance to be involved in procurement, getting a chance to dabble in the project controls. I think being on programs, we need a lot of people typically to run programs, and there is always something that needs doing. And so having that attitude of, sure, I'll do whatever needs doing, even if it's something that I haven't done before, I think that that's what has helped me in developing my career, and I think what I see in others as well.
That's great. Yeah. And to me, it seems like it's something that would be, first of all, extremely exciting, because there are so many moving parts. And I understand that with any job is going to come some stress and some excitement, right? They're both going to come together. But I think what I like about it, just from the outside looking in, is that it seems to me that it's a very high leverage position, meaning that when you get to step back and look at an entire project and there's 50 different components, if you improve just one of them, right, you could have a massive improvement on the project as a whole, right? So like, you're in a position, I feel like, where you really can help to make some key decisions that can drastically change, the success of that project. And it seems like in a position like that, kind of like you just expressed, it really is going to lean on kind of all of your education and knowledge that you've amassed like over the years to be able to step back and look at all these and work with all these different people, like you just mentioned, and help them move forward. And to me, that's got to be like super exciting. Obviously, like I said, stressful, there's a lot going on, but I would assume that as you get better at it, you can really like get into one meeting and maybe change the course of a project.
And I think that is where we do see a lot of difference with our projects and programs. Most of my career, I've been co-located with clients. That doesn't often happen as a project manager, but
right.
With our programs, because these are so large and so long, often we sit side by side with our clients. And so we are every day helping them solve their problems. And when some new, kink gets thrown, we have to sit with them and try to solve a problem that we were not anticipating, or solve a problem that has not been solved before. And that to me is exciting. And that's what makes it really, really fun, is that we are at the table to help with that strategy and help figure out ultimately, again, as I mentioned before, our ultimate goal is not just the delivery of the infrastructure, but it's meeting the goals of the client, whatever those goals happen to be.
Right.
So it's keeping that in mind and figuring out, okay, well, with this new change, how can we still meet those goals? And that to me is something I find exciting.
Yeah, and on a program that the goals can be $1 billion goals.
Yes.
Not $1 million goals, which amplifies things. So, Erin, what final piece of advice might you offer to AEC professionals interested in possibly transitioning into project management?
I've had a lot of really just great mentors throughout my time in program management. And so I think it's identifying those people who are doing the work that you might be interested in doing. And as I said, there is almost always something to be done on a program. So even if you're not ready to fully invest, seeing if there's something that you can do to support a program and see if it's something that you might like, or if it's something you might not, that's not for you. And then I think it is, as I said, finding those mentors, finding those people who can help you develop, but just not being afraid too of the unknown. And that's something that's really important for being in program management. There's a lot of unknown in program management. And I would say that differs from traditional project management. So if you're have that sense of adventure, I like to say we're adrenaline junkies in program management because there are so many things that change and differ, and you got to be ready for something totally new to be happening tomorrow. But if you do have that sense of adventure, program management may be something that's for you. So watching for whatever those opportunities are. And of course, telling people what you want to do. I think that's a mistake that I see a lot of people make, is they just assume that, okay, somebody will be watching me and somebody will tap me and, ask me to do this, that, and the other. If there's something you want to do, tell someone,
Right. Yeah.
And that was truly how I was able to have the opportunity to move different places, was because I vocalized it and I said, hey, my family situation is such that I can move. So if it means growth opportunity, if it means being able to serve clients in a way that fits my skill set, that is something that I can do. But I had to tell people that because people don't necessarily assume that that's something everyone is willing to do.
Yeah, I love that last point. When I was a young engineer, I had a manager who always used to tell me the squeaky wheel gets the oil, meaning you got to speak up. If you want something, you got to ask for it.
That's right.
Because, you may know you want it, but if no one else knows, doors may not be open for you, and that becomes challenging.
That's right.
Well, this all sounds exciting. And if you do transition into program management, I think now that we've heard this from Erin, you can put adrenaline junkie on your LinkedIn profile. Just be sure to attribute it to Erin. But once again, Erin Slayton, she's a licensed professional engineer, senior VP and transportation program management director at HDR. Erin, we really appreciate you spending some time with us here on the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me, and hey, this has been a lot of fun.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Erin. She's done some amazing things in her career as a program manager, and we were lucky to get her for a few minutes here. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help AEC professionals become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.